Hello, everyone. My name is Roberto Toro. I am one of the moderators here. We have Kristin and Christine from Footnoting History. They're fantastic people, and they have a really fun presentation today on preventing podcast problems. So I will disappear and let you guys begin.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Whether you're here now or you're watching the recorded version later, we're glad to have you with us. As our wonderful admin just said, I'm Christine Casaputi, and
Usinski.
and we are happy to talk to you kind of about what we've stumbled upon in our podcasting issues and how we fix them, and maybe give you some ideas for doing the same thing. And if not, you can just laugh at us because we laugh at us with all the things that we've gone through.
This is kind of our way of we learn the hard way, so hopefully you don't have to.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going on here. 100%. We've made the mistakes. We want you to make the mistakes. That's kind of what it is, you know. Footnoting history, just a little bit of background to start. We started in 2013, so we're kind of ending our 10th year now, which is bizarre. We'll hit 300 episodes in the beginning of next year. We have a hosting team of 5 and an admin team of 2, which is Kristin and myself. And our specialization is short episodes covering a wide variety of areas of history. You only have to talk about what you like. So if you listen to an episode, the host, you're guaranteed to have big feelings about the topic. Am I right on that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of just the way we roll, so that nobody has to cover what they don't like.
And
Kristin,
so then it's something for everybody too who's listening, because not everybody likes the same area of history. So we kind of spread that around with our hosts' interests. And we are all trained historians. We all have history degrees. So while we sometimes are working on things that follow our particular research interests professionally, they don't always. It's just funny things or great things that we happen across, which is really refreshing.
Yeah, the great thing about podcasting is you can do whatever you want.
Yes.
Right? So our first thing that we want to talk about is promising less and providing more. That was a problem that we had when we started. We promised everybody everything, you know? The idea for the podcast was in like January, and then 3 weeks later we launched. That was a mistake. Don't do that. Plan for yourselves, plan for your listeners. Your listeners do deserve the best that you can give them. And I don't like to make it sound like I'm saying, tell them you're not going to do anything, because that's not what I mean. But you want to manage listener expectations. So if you're telling yourself, I can do an episode every week, realize some point you're not going to be able to do that. So you might want to start off maybe with 2 episodes a month, or at least making sure that you're kind of prepared for what's going to come, instead of just like jumping in, promising people the world, and disappointing them as a result of being unable to keep up, right? It's way better for you to be able to sit there and say, look, I thought I'd only be able to give you 3, but now I'm giving you 4. Does that sound what you think, Kristin?
Oh, for sure. And if you launch, I wasn't there in 2013 at the beginning. I joined later, but we were all really maybe used to being overworked graduate students, and so thought maybe that we could that they could do it every week, or do it that fast within that 3-week idea to launch sort of period. So I guess it can't hurt to have a few in the bank for those weeks when life kind of punches you in the face and you can't put out that episode. So if you can give yourself a little bit more time to plan, that would probably be really helpful to you.
We started off with an episode every week and 12 different hosts. Don't do that. I mean, everybody was great people, but it's a lot, and it's a lot to manage, and it's a lot to deal with while you're making these episodes for people. So, and this is even if you're working by yourself, actually, probably especially if you're working by yourself, you can't just pass things off to somebody else. So always like promise half of what you'll give, because who doesn't like getting things they weren't expecting? Whereas otherwise, you're going to end up like us and be like, I'm sorry, we had to cut back on everything to make it kind of more manageable.
Yeah,
Like
and you can
that.
just call it a special bonus episode, and then people feel like they're getting something
Exactly.
like extra.
Exactly. 100%. Here's our next one, which is schedule everything, right? Like Kristen was saying, start with episodes in the can. This this picture in the corner is a live look at me when I'm doing episodes. Not really, but
It does look kind of like you.
it does look kind of like me. If she had glasses, it would actually be me. But definitely kind of what we were saying before. If you don't have a team, or even if you do everything in advance. Do not rush to opening your podcast. Build in breaks for yourself. Like, let
Yeah.
people know. For us, it's usually June, right? In June, we take our time. Everybody thinks that we're not doing anything because there's no episodes airing, but that's when we get everything done for the rest of the year. One reason that you kind of don't want to have a short lead time is because if you do, you'll end up like I did. And when we first started, we had a situation where, because things happen, somebody was unable to finish their podcasts and it had to air within like 2 days of what we were doing. So I sat in my car before I went into work at about 4 o'clock in the morning, writing the script by hand for something so that we would have something to put out, because you really don't want to be scrambling for this. It's not a good thing. It does create a lot of work at the front end, to plan ahead like that and feel like nobody's listening, but you want to have things ready to go. Like, I recorded my Halloween episode for us in like February and I sent it to Kristen, and I honestly, not gonna lie, by the time it came out, I had to listen to it to remember what it was. So you just got to get yourself ahead because, by the time fall came, I was preparing for this, right?
Yeah, you were all set.
I was
I do most of the audio editing, and so I need time to get that and work with it. And then if people need to re-record something, I think at one point someone kind of flipped a year when they were reading, and so I was able to go back and say, hey, can you re-record this and just send me that little bit, and I can just pop it in. So I want to give myself enough time to do that, because there's something is always kind of happens. And everybody at some point is late. I've been late. It just kind of happens. So you want to build in that buffer, because it will inevitably happen.
all right, Kristen, learning it all with our little brain over there who's doing his best. Do you want to talk about how we had to teach you everything when you came in?
Yeah, I know. So I learned a lot of things. I learned parts of what Christine did when she was going to go away for like a week or something. And I wanted to make sure I knew how to make the video for YouTube and how to upload things and put them onto Podbean, because you do have to have, or it is at least the way that we work, a division of labor. Because it otherwise, you kind of have your lane and you mostly stick to it, but occasionally you have to do other things. And so it is important to learn all the pieces of the machine, so you can put out that episode and that your coworkers can take a break, because we all really need to be able to do that. You need to
Yeah,
build
and
that in
this
yourself
this
as well.
definitely goes for even if you're outsourcing parts of your work. Because what happens if something on that end that you can't control just doesn't work anymore? You don't have to have every single episode sound perfect, but you don't want something to stop it from coming out if you can avoid it. I hate audio editing. I'm terrible at it. If I told you which episodes I audio edited because I had no choice, like, you'd probably be able to tell. But they weren't so bad that you couldn't handle it, you couldn't find it. And I did eat a lot of chocolate when I was doing it to get myself through, because it's just not my specialty. And also, learning it all is a good idea for when you have to train somebody new, right? So Kristen was not our original audio editor. We've had She's our third audio editor, actually. And as they left, it kind of at times fell to me to help the new person who came in to at least know what those responsibilities were. Kristin taught herself how to do the actual editing. But if I didn't have a hand on it at all ever, then I wouldn't have even known to tell her like how far ahead we need to have the audio files, to give her the things that she needed to then take over that job. If I had to do the audio all the time, we would have no podcast because that's how much I dislike doing it. But it's the sort of thing where I have to know it, right? If Kristin goes away and something's not able to be done before then, that's my thing. And I think nowadays there are so many more resources for having other people do it that if you can take the time to teach it to yourself, you'll save money. Like, because otherwise, if Kristin fell out and couldn't do it, I'd have to pay somebody to do it, right? And that's great for them, but not so much for my pocket. So it's important to be able to be that kind of team player and learn it. And if you're the one person, shop, make sure that you meet somebody or have names of people that you can ask if you can't do it for yourself, right? Because we don't want to see you sinking either.
Mm-hmm.
All right, money time. Some people think podcasting looks like that. If you're an independent podcaster, we all know out here, it doesn't, right? We are not rolling in the money. But you do need to track these things, start tracking before you think you're going to need it. That's super, super important. We have a spreadsheet that's shared and a folder for receipts. This sounds kind of like obvious, but we didn't do it at the beginning. We didn't have a shared thing. We didn't all know what was going on. And it means that at some point in time, you're going to have to try and figure it out, right? Especially now, we have things like you have Patreon and Ko-fi, and you might have a YouTube channel or ads, and like it's actually whether it's a large amount of money or not, it's streams of revenue that you need to know what's happening. You need to know,
and also like to know your upcoming expenses, so you
exactly. Yeah, when
and
it's true, because when we took over running the podcast together, when Kristin came in, she was like, how does this work? And I guess I got to remember when things are due. So you want to make sure that you know when you're in the positive flow, when you're not. And you also, if you're working with other people, you want to make sure that there are no hurt feelings or misconceptions about what exactly is going on. And if you are, like we do have a Patreon, and we try to let our listeners and our patrons know that they're what's covering our running costs. Like, we're not taking this money and able to go on a vacation, although that would be nice. But because of them, we're able to keep it going without having to pay much out of pocket anymore, which we couldn't do when we started. So,
or put ads in. I mean, we haven't even
right. We have not had to put ads in because of this, But I think too, if people are spending their money on you, that it's good for them to know where that money is going. Right. So if you can say, hey, thanks, patrons, like because of you, our hosting fees are taken care of for the next 3 years. Like that makes somebody who's giving money like feel really good. So you don't want to ever be in the spot where you have no idea what you're spending or what you're doing. And even if it's just a podcast as a hobby, there's going to be money involved at some time. And if you're just spending money from your pocket, you're kind of going to not realize how much you're sinking into it. So don't put yourself in a spot where finances are going to be a reason why you can't keep doing it if you really enjoy it, I think. Right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. No, it's one of those sort of like obvious things after you say it. And you're like, oh yeah, we should definitely do that.
Yeah.
But it might not occur to you at first, because probably if you're putting out a podcast, I mean, it's something that you really love and are excited about, and that might not be the thing that you're thinking about in the forefront. Everyone who doesn't do podcasting probably thinks that it breaks in a lot of money, but when you start doing it, you realize that it doesn't necessarily, and also that's not exactly why you're doing it. I mean, we're all doing this in part, at least, big part, because we really love history and the aspect of public history and bringing that to a wide audience and just reaching a lot of people. And it's really wonderful. But you can't lose sight of the finance part of it.
No, because unfortunately, it is kind of a business whether you want it to be or not. And you just need to be aware of what you're spending because it's very hard to do a podcast for free. Even if you just count your emotional and physical and mental labor of creating it all. So don't end up like we did at one point where we were just kind of scrambling to figure out what everything was. And we were lucky because we were in the green, right? Or in the, what's it called? In the red, in the black. Black is good, right? In the black is good and the red is bad. Right? Black
Yes,
Friday.
I
Yeah.
think so, yeah.
So, we were lucky that it wasn't a problem for us, but it was one of those things where we were like, oh my gosh, like, especially now, because like they're changing things with taxes and, how much money you get coming in before you have to count it. You just never want to be caught on the back foot in that kind of a situation. Here's
Parking
a
fees,
happier
I
one
mean, all
though.
the stuff adds up.
Yeah, no, for sure. Here's kind of a happier one to talk about. This is about like podcasting community. Look at those happy little chat bubbles. Um, if somebody asks you to be a guest on their podcast and you're friendly with them, you should try and do it. You should build a community, and this is important for people who are podcasting or not podcasting. It's not just stuck to one section because again, you're going to get stuck. There's going to be podcasting problems. You want to be able to say, "Hey Mary, can you do me a favor and come on my pod with me?" Or, "Hey, do you know anything about where I could find somebody who can do this editing?" It can be lonely to podcast, like 1000%. You're by yourself. The five of us all live in different cities, in different time zones. So we're not able to hang out and just do it all in one giant studio. Well, that would be amazing. And we have to kind of figure it out together, and see what's going to be going on. But you want to make yourself somebody who's likable. And if you're a nice person, it's not going to be that hard. But building a community on the internet takes more work than being in the room with people. Nobody's going to know that you're not going to say no to them unless you put yourself out there as an option. Right? What do you think?
No, absolutely. And I think that this is a way that we have sort of found hosts over the years too, is
Like
like
you.
friends. Yeah.
That's how we found you.
Yeah, I mean it's just through and you and Josh have worked on things outside of podcasting together, and that's how you found one another. And so there are all these different avenues of ways that you can find people. I'm not a huge social media person. I'm not like I think I literally have it's not called Twitter anymore. I don't even know what it is now. Like I have like a handle, but I don't do that as much. But conferences like this, and if you are an academic, if you're going to other conferences and presenting papers and stuff, that's a good way of meeting people too. We have business cards too that we kind of leave everywhere. That's another way. But anytime that people reach out to us through like email or social media or any of these conferences, it's just it's a wonderful way to meet like-minded people, and to make friends. I mean, even if you don't end up going on each other's podcasts, I mean, we listen to each other's podcasts too, and we support each other that way, and that's also really helpful. So yeah, I mean, you probably will find a lot of people that you really enjoy.
Yeah, it's actually interesting because you said about not being on social media, and we made these slides kind of before I really thought through another kind of podcasting problem that's around these days, which is the changing of Twitter to X caused a huge shift in our engagement on that site. We saw for the first time people leaving following us because they were closing their accounts, for whatever their personal reasons are for doing that. And so our engagement went down, and it became a big shift because we largely grew our podcast through Twitter when it first started, because Twitter was huge in around 2013, and we were not huge. So that was how we met people and how we talked to people. And a lot of my good podcasting friends kind of came from that. And now people are sort of scattering to the wind. So it raises this, there's all these other platforms that are coming up. There's Threads, there's Blue Sky, which I always in my head say Blue Ski because of the way it's written. But there's all these options, and it's kind of like, how do you regroup when your main source of promotion changes? In social media, like any of us or any user, we don't control those platforms. And I'm not going to lie, we definitely got kind of probably a little too comfortable, being there, and hadn't thought ahead for like where do you go for your promotion when the place that has your biggest audience is no longer what it was. I'm still trying to figure that out. We are on other platforms. We're on Threads, we're on Blue Sky. But part of it was going where our friends went. Reaching out to these friends that we talk to all the time and saying, well, where are you going for your podcast? Now, where's your podcast community? I've heard a lot of people have started doing Discord servers, or Facebook groups with, whatever they're doing, but you're still kind of rebuilding when your main source goes away. Not that it went away, but it changed because our engagement rates plummeted. Our listenership, even if the numbers were still there, they weren't looking at it as much because they moved on to other places. And then there comes into the, why are they moving? Do we move? Do we abandon? What do we do? So, a lot of podcasting is using other sources to do things, whether it's your host platform for the podcast itself or something like social media. And you kind of always have to be thinking what's going to happen when I can't use this place anymore. And I definitely did not do that. I don't know if anybody else did. If you did, and you have kind of what your best thought is about leaving certain platforms or seeing certain platforms change, because it could be any platform at any time. Or let us know what your thoughts are, or where you found your community moving to, or even if they've moved to Twitter. Like, there's not Twitter anymore, but you know what I mean. It's just interesting. You have to have this community to talk to, because if you're podcasting in a void, you're just going to get lost. Anyway, Kristin, our final page. Thoughts? You want to say something?
Oh, are you asking me or the audience? I was like, what is your biggest concern? I mean, I think I can look back at how long it took me in the beginning to do the audio editing and laugh and laugh about how long it used to take me and how much I have learned, and how grateful I am for online tutorial videos. You can find anything on YouTube, including this. Yeah, so I'm very grateful that Studio One puts out a lot of those videos for learning, and I have learned a tremendous amount. I always think my biggest concern is going to be finding the next topic, but it always finds me. So it hasn't quite been a problem yet. But I always think that that's going to be a problem, and it hasn't yet.
Yeah. And if there are any questions out there that you want to ask us, or you want to answer any of these questions, we're here for it. Otherwise, we'll just keep talking until somebody asks us something. But yeah, so for us, it's like, my time-saving trick: do it when you have the time. Stay ahead, right? If you think you're going to do something, just start doing it, because otherwise the time is going to come. You're going to run out. Like, for example, I'm supposed to do a recording with Josh today. Hi, Josh. And he's in El Paso, Texas, and they're having huge internet outages. So we're not going to probably be able to record today. And you don't want to be stuck with a day where that happens and then your episode does not come out. I don't know if anybody, Roberto, I saw you say we called you out on something. We didn't do that on purpose. But maybe you have advice for us on something that we should be called out on. I don't know. What mistakes do we look back on now? I laugh at the fact that we thought that we could do an episode every week with 12 rotating hosts. That was rough. Our hosts were great. They're good people. But it's a lot to manage. And I give a lot of credit to the people who do it with huge teams, and also the people who do it with nobody else. Doing a podcast with nobody else is a tremendous amount of work. Maybe you guys probably have more information for us than we do for you with that, because that's really, you can't pass things off, and we can. So in a way, we actually don't have to know as much as you do. What do you think about that, Kristen? Like, do you think it's harder for them? I think it is.
Yeah, I mean, the scheduling thing is kind of one thing, but having to do it all by yourself, I think, would be way harder. And just having to know how to do everything and never having a break.
Mm-hmm.
I,
I
I
also
think
like, we
that's
keep a
important.
running list of topics that are going to be done.
Mhm.
We keep a running list of topics that listeners have asked for, and that we all can access, because that's the best way for us to be able to know and not step on each other's toes and remember what we've done, because we're almost
And things that we've done, because there's
yeah,
so many episodes that
we had it
even
happen recently
that,
with Halloween, right?
yeah, yeah, that happened. We really liked the werewolves, apparently.
Yeah, we almost had the same story appear in a second Halloween episode several years later, because we hadn't checked the list and we weren't there. So check the things, set yourself reminders. Um, just kind of do everything you can so that you don't have to think about something on the day it's airing, and be okay
Mhm.
with communicating with your listeners. So like when we switched over to the every other week episode thing, we probably should have publicized that a little bit better, but it went okay. You just want to make sure that you're clear with what's going on. Announcements at the top of your episode. Look, hey, I need to take some personal time. I'm not going to be able to record. It's all about kind of preventing listeners from being disappointed. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
because you do have a relationship with your audience,
mhm.
and so there are, are things that you should communicate and be open about as much as you're comfortable with. But you do have a relationship with them. And I know the podcasts that I enjoy the most are the ones where, like, I feel like I'm like friends with the hosts, and I'm like sitting in on like a fun session with them, and like I kind of know them a little bit. I always have fun with that.
Yeah, and like if you're ever doing a Q&A episode, be prepared, because we were concerned. We didn't know if anybody was going to submit questions. So we were like, well, what do we do if people did? People actually, we had enough that we could probably do another one, because some people sent in questions kind of after the deadline. But we didn't know when we said we were going to do one if anybody was going to actually care or submit. So I'm not gonna lie, I made a list of questions that we could ask each other if we needed to do it, because you never know. A turnout can be huge and fantastic, and we were lucky that we had enough questions that it could answer. But when we decided to take that leap into like, let's do a Q&A, we had no idea what people were going to say to us, or if it was going to be appropriate to be even put on an episode, because it could have gone really poorly. Um, and it didn't, but that was luck.
Yeah.
If you're on a team, communication with each other is huge too. We have a group thread that we talk about everything, because you don't want to be the person who takes somebody else's topic that they were dreaming of doing. That would also be terrible. Um,
Yeah,
and
and it's nice to check in with your fellow
yeah,
cast. Yes. And it's just they are people that we genuinely like anyway. So it's
it's
a nice
true.
way to
It's true. So we've
check
only
in
got
on
like 5 minutes or so left. If anybody has anything to say, or Kristen, you want to give us a final thought?
I would like to I guess just pause and see if anybody has anything for us. Because I know that we've been talking a lot.
And if you don't ask us now, you can ask us through any of these methods that are on your screen. Our email address, our various places where we exist on the internet. If you do, it'll be Kristen or I who answers it, because we're the ones who do that. And yeah, that's kind of where we are. Please
Yeah, I mean, I
feel
think
free to
we've
give us advice too. We're always open
yeah,
for advice.
yeah,
Tell,
we certainly
tell
don't
us what
know
you think we should do.
everything.
Yeah.
But we're still learning as we go. But we've hopefully given you some things to think about.
Gave myself things to think about as I was talking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to try not to make the mistakes that we have made. But we'll
Like
make more, and it'll be okay. And
Yeah.
that's another thing too. Something won't go right. You will mess something up, and it'll be fine. You'll be
Yeah.
fine.
So yeah, so that's it for us. Really, thank you, Roberto, for helping us.
No, of
Thank
course.
you.
It was a pleasure having you guys here. I learned a lot about what I should have done when I started.
So, learning it the hard way like us then, huh?
Oh, you know, I still don't have a episode bank, so
Oh no, God, how do you function?
I haven't released anything in a few months.
That's how you function.
No,
I understand. I get it. Like
I
it's hard. The
I travel
episode
for work, so like it's rough.
it is, man. You know, it's like one of those things where you're just sitting there and you're like, if I don't do it now, I definitely took my like time off from work over winter and was like, I'm doing Halloween and I'm doing the holidays for next year. Bye.
Oh, that is
You
my
do better
plan. I
than I
have
do.
2
I
weeks
just have a
off.
travel
So.
microphone.
Well,
Yeah.
I brought my microphone on travel. It was just
Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's so wonderful of you.
I also just work like crazy.
I could not. I did have to do graphics when I was traveling one time. I had
Oh,
to
that's
pull out
not
my
fun.
laptop and remake graphics. And I was like, this sucks. I'm on vacation.
Yeah.
Not
No,
this
That's
but
right. I did the Q&A episode. I brought my travel mic.
no, but it's very
Yeah,
interesting because these are a lot like these are actually fantastic tips for those who are thinking about starting a podcast. And you know, I wish this is something like that was more easily accessible to people too, because like sometimes you just like get on the list and it's just the ones from the RSS feeds basically saying here's what you should do, and then
Right.
they never say here's all the small things you should do.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
like
I wish we had that when we started.
I mean
we, we
I
didn't
wish
know.
I wish so too, and like this would be something I would like. Yep, this is a presentation I'd send to someone if they're like, "How do I start a podcast?" It's just here
You're
you
very
go.
kind. Thank you.
And then, but I also one thing I
Yeah.
found very helpful when I started out was just reaching out to your favorite podcast host and asking, "Hey,
True.
how did you do your thing?"
You know, I never thought of that because here's my like big secret confession. I had never listened to a podcast when we did
Oh.
because when the other people who created it, they had all been listening to them and then they brought me on and I was like, cool. So I didn't have a favorite podcaster, but I wish I did. That would have been amazing.
hmm
That's so smart. Reach out to people. Ask Roberto. Ask us. We'll tell you what the trenches are
I mean,
like.
we love it when people email us. We've had like high school students email us, and
Yeah.
like it's just it's really nice because it can feel like you are just speaking into the void sometimes when people don't respond to with
They
like
can't talk back
comments
to
or
us.
whatever. Yeah, but there are lots of people out there who are listening to you and who you're bringing a lot of joy and a lot of entertainment and a lot of hopefully for us education too,
Yeah.
all in one. And that is good to remember because it can be easy to forget that sometimes.
It's so easy to see like a download number and then like not be able to know who are those people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for me, I always love getting an email where, especially when you're like on a bit of a hiatus, like, "Hey, just caught up. When's the next thing coming out?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
that
We want
urges me
more
to
of
like,
that.
I'm like, oh, that for me, that always makes me feel like, oh, people want to listen.
They
Mhm.
do. And that's a good point that you made about reaching out to podcasters that you love, even if it's not for advice. Like, just
Mhm.
tell them you like them. It'll make their day.
Yes, it will.
Oh,
Like, Who
I
doesn't want
do
to
that.
hear that somebody inspired somebody else to start a podcast? Like, that's good. I mean, that's part of like community building and just like making people happy.
Yeah,
Or just
no,
somebody liked your topic and they're like, they want to go read more about it and they have questions for you, or they were, excited because they had been learning about it in school and then you were talking about it. And like, that's really lovely.
no, it's fantastic. Or when someone says, "Oh, I've been looking for this topic forever and no one's covered it," and I'm
Mhm.
like, "Oh my gosh, yes, this
Yeah.
is."
It's not a
Um,
void.
it's not a void. People are
It's
listening, and
It's true.
yeah,
Now
but if
we're all
it,
yeah.
oh yeah, no, but it's just a lot of fun. And if anyone in the audience does have questions, feel free to write. Just ask about anything. We like
Yes.
talking.
It's true. Podcasters like to talk about what they do.
Mhm.
And because it is the void so often, it makes us feel excited to hear the void shout back at us. Just please not nasty stuff.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
you can keep your negative comments to yourself.
Like, you had to listen to us and you had to come. Like, I always feel like if they give me a negative comment, I'm just like, well, you know what? It made you passionate. That's great.
Mhm.
You were passionate enough to tell me you were angry. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right.
Alrighty. So if no one else has any questions, whoever listened, thank you so much for joining Footnoting History here today. It was Kristin and Christine. It was such a pleasure being able to hear from you guys. And I hope you guys have fun with the rest of the intelligence speech.
Yes, thank you for having us, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very, very much.
Of course, anytime.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.